Let's look at some common myths about inflammation. Now, inflammation is the common thread among several serious chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, polycystic ovarian syndrome, also known as PCOS, asthma, arthritis, both rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, and more. In fact, it's really pervasive. Inflammation is so pervasive as an ongoing threat to health. This includes our physical health, our mental health, and all aspects of enjoying our life and being free of disease. So let's get into it. Let's go to our first myth, which is that inflammation is only a localized issue, such as joint pain or redness. That's not true. That's not true. Joint pain is one symptom or sign, and redness or other changes in skin color, maybe relative to your base skin color, it gets more of a purple or a green look to it in terms of inflammation, but it's not localized at all. Inflammation is often systemic, meaning it affects the whole body, it's everywhere, and is definitely directly connected to gut health by affecting multiple systems. That includes our immune system and the development of chronic diseases. You may have noticed, whether you've experienced this or you've seen it in others, people get one chronic illness, then they get a second one, a third one, perhaps a fourth, etc., right? Often what they have in common is inflammation. So it's important to understand that even though a particular body part or area may have symptoms like pain or swelling, discomfort, lack of range of motion, gas, bloating, etc., there's definitely more to the story when it comes to inflammation. All right. Now, so let's look at another myth. Gut health only matters for indigestion. Nope. It matters for digestion in the positive sense and indigestion in the negative sense. But gut health, frankly, is literally central. It's in the middle of our bodies. It's central to our overall health. This influences our mental health, our joints, our musculoskeletal system, our sleep quality, all of these things can be affected, along with autoimmune conditions. So anyone who's struggling with immune system issues really would be well served to look at their gut health. Additionally, if you have pain anywhere, if you're struggling with mental health issues like anxiety and depression, those are also affected by inflammation. So inflammation can get us a lot of places, and gut health is often a core issue. Our gut, it works hard, right? It's a 24/7 kind of an organ, and it's doing wonderful things for us. We want to be kind to our guts. All right, let's look at another myth, and that is that all grains, including whole grains, that's right, including whole grains, are healthy and essential for fiber. Now, that's a myth. Many grains, particularly those that contain gluten, spelled gluten, gluten, can irritate the gut lining and trigger inflammation in people who are susceptible to reacting to it. Not everyone is equally vulnerable. For those who are vulnerable or susceptible, this can be a big deal. And a lot of times when people are trying to eat well and eat healthy, they will focus on whole grains. But for some of us, grains in general maybe aren't so kind to our body and can be a direct source of inflammation. So if this is you, please listen here carefully. When grains grow in the fields, right, they're growing as grasses, they can be sprayed, depending on how they are grown by the farmer, with pesticides and herbicides. Now, these are chemicals that are trying to get rid of pests and diseases that might affect the growth of said grain. However, these chemicals persist on these foods once they're harvested, and they can irritate the gut lining directly and trigger inflammation in susceptible people. They literally disrupt the gut and increase what's called intestinal permeability, thus boosting the level of inflammation throughout the human body. Now, let me take a moment here to explain what is intestinal permeability. These are chemicals that disrupt what should be what are called tight junctions. In other words, the overlap between the cells that line the small intestine, the epithelial cells, they should be like this, right? Can't see anything through it. It's a tight junction. That means as the food goes by, it's being properly digested and assimilated. That's what we want to have happen in that small intestine in our gut. When this is corrupted, though, those tight junctions loosen, they become what's called a leaky gut, or you have intestinal permeability. This is expressed two ways: leaky gut or intestinal permeability. Therefore, the food particles going by, particularly the larger proteins that are supposed to stay on the digestive side, wind up being exposed out to the bloodstream too soon. The immune system sees them and goes on the attack because it's a foreign protein. And that gets a whole host of problems in motion, boosting, really increasing strongly the overall background baseline level of inflammation that you're experiencing. So any symptoms that you might have will be affected by this, right? Your immune system is going on the alert appropriately, but the fact that those tight junctions have become loose and weakened and have become more permeable is the problem. That allows these proteins to cross the barrier before they're supposed to. Immune system goes on alert, goes on to attack what it perceives as foreign proteins that might cause infection. That's why the immune system is involved. It's there to be in a surveillance mode, but sometimes it gets overly aggressive. It's going after things that actually aren't a problem, but it hasn't made that decision yet, that discernment. So this cycle of inflammation can easily be repeated over and over again if you're eating grains that might be triggering it. This means that people experiencing this can feel increasingly tired, achy, brain fogged, irritable, more pain, stiffness, and generally unwell. Sometimes this also spins people off into a cycle of a lack of control of their blood sugar. They might experience the blood sugar roller coaster where the blood sugar zips up and then it crashes back down. Another way this can show up is with the hangries, where someone is a combination of hungry and angry. That's another way it can express itself. So again, this is recognizable. And sometimes it's grains across the board or specific grains. So keep in mind, even if you're eating whole grains, it may or may not be agreeing with you. If you aren't feeling awesome after eating, it's really good to take a look at what you ate, okay? All right, here's another myth. Ultra-processed, highly refined foods, they're fine in moderation. In other words, if you occasionally eat junk food, it's okay. It's occasionally, right? But let's be honest. What do we even mean by that? What's occasionally? One person, it might be once a month or once every 4 to 6 months. Somebody else, it might be once a day. Those are very different frequencies, right? So the reality is this, friends, even small amounts of ultra-processed, highly refined foods can disrupt gut health over time due to additives, all kinds of additives, including added refined sugars, added salt, and unhealthy kinds of fats. The ways in which many of the ultra-processed, highly refined foods are put together, it's a chemical soup. If you read the labels, you're like, what is this? Right? So here's the bottom line. Ultra-processed foods are no good for human health. They are devoid of nutrients. Please avoid them as much as possible whenever you can. Now, here's a tip about how to recognize ultra-processed foods. Read the labels of what you eat and drink. If you don't easily recognize the ingredients, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, and you can't spell the ingredients, don't eat it. It's an ultra-processed food. You don't want it, okay? Think about it. For your grandparents, your great-grandparents, food was pretty straightforward. It certainly wasn't ultra-processed and highly refined. They lived in a different era. In nutrition in that era, if people had access to food, the foods were really pretty simple. And there's just a lot to be said for eating actual food and not a whole bunch of chemicals and strange additives. All right, let's look at another myth. Corn is a vegetable and is therefore healthy. Here's the reality. Corn is actually a grain. It's not a vegetable and is processed corn products, different kinds. Particularly, the one that's probably among the worst is high fructose corn syrup. Absolutely, it's highly inflammatory and nutritionally poor. It's not offering you any nutrients. And in fact, it's stripping away nutrients that you need. This is one of those that's in the net negative bin. So if you're going to eat corn, eat actual real corn, please. If it's ever in a processed product, it's some kind of a chip. Heaven forbid it's high fructose corn syrup. Other things like that, no good. No good. It's just cheating you of your own vitamins, minerals, nutrients, etc. in order for your body to process it, be able to deal with that stuff, okay? So, corn is not a vegetable, it is a grain, all right? Next myth. Here's a fun one. I bet the comments light up. In fact, let me hear from you in the comments. I'd love to get your thoughts about what I've covered so far in this video. Please comment, please like, please subscribe. This helps this channel to grow, and that way other people can find my video. And if you share this with them as well, that's super win. Thank you so much for your help. All right, let's talk about soy. Soy is always a healthy protein alternative. Nope, here's the reality. These days, most soy is genetically modified and it contains something called lectins and phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens, that can disrupt gut health and hormone balance. In fact, the way most soy is raised commercially here in the US, it is sprayed and sprayed and sprayed again. It's often full of herbicides and pesticides and is unhealthy simply because it's got that toxic load. In addition, because it's been genetically modified, they've often boosted the profile of certain things about the soy, sometimes, interestingly, maybe to reduce the dependence on pesticides and herbicides. However, the proteins have changed that are in the soy, and the immune system, once it's exposed to it, goes, what the heck is this? And it goes on hyperdrive, boosting, right? Really increasing that level of inflammation you're exposed to, which is really unfortunate. Soy all by itself back in the day probably didn't have all these issues, but today it does. It also has an increased profile because of the genetic modification of more of what are called lectins. These are things that interact in the blood and sometimes can be irritating to red blood cells and absolutely strongly increase inflammation in not a good way. Phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens, can be found in any number of foods and in balance. But again, once the soy has been altered, it might change that profile. And so that plant might have more in the way of phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens, than it historically has been true. And this can affect some people, again, for folks who are sensitive that way. This can indeed disrupt gut health. People might experience bloating, indigestion, gas, etc. And it might overall shift their hormone balance. For some people, they don't need more estrogen. Many women in today's world, all around the world, are overly exposed to estrogens anyway. They're outside of that woman's body, called xenoestrogens, spelled Xenoestrogens. Okay? This can also affect men as well. And so what we don't want to do is eat foods that are going to mess with our normal hormonal balance. So if you can get organic soy, not GMO'd, etc., not sprayed, not pesticides, no herbicides, great. But if the soy that you have access to is compromised, you might be best to avoid this, okay? It might not be the best option for a healthy protein source. All right, let's look at some more things. Here's another myth. All vegetable oils are heart healthy. That can be a big myth. Let's talk about it. Here's the reality. Many seed oils, such as canola or corn oil, for instance, they are high in what are known as omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation when consumed excessively. Now, when we eat small amounts of these things, we can get omega-6 fatty acids from many places, and that's okay. When we get a lot and we're inundated, and if you're eating those ultra-processed, highly refined foods, you are inundated, bombarded with omega-6 fatty acids. That causes all of the problems that we see with inflammation, whether it's things with eczema and psoriasis, itchy skin, anxiety, depression, joint pain, brain fog, achiness, tiredness, exhaustion, etc., right? It's decreasing human health. So please be aware that with seed oils, things can really be compromised, okay? Because when you have these tiny seeds and then you create an oil from them, you have super concentrated it. So it's no longer a small amount that you would normally get. It's a lot when you eat this. So it's a tremendous amount of omega-6 fatty acids. It's more than your body can really deal with. And if you're vulnerable, there goes your inflammation profile. Just jumps up. Okay? All right. Here's another myth. Milk is always a good source of calcium and nutrients. All right, listen, friends, let's chat about this. I know I'm going to hear things in the comments here. Let's keep it real, though. There's these thing called A1 proteins in conventional cow's milk, and those can trigger inflammation and digestive issues in sensitive individuals, making alternatives like goat or sheep milk preferable if you're going to drink or consume milk. Now, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're an adult. I'm talking about the situation for adults. So anybody who's gone through puberty, right? If you're still drinking milk, I gotta ask you, why? Does this even really make sense for your health? If you're somebody who always has the sniffles or a runny nose, if you're going all the time, you're coughing up a lot of mucus, you don't feel well, etc., it might be good to get milk out of your diet. There's other great sources of calcium and nutrients, wonderful sources. Milk makes sense for the young of a species. In other words, if you're a mammal, like if you're a human, right? You're a human watching this video, and your mother breastfed you, that's great. We say thanks to her. You had your mother's milk. Makes sense, right? If you are a cow and you have a calf as your baby, it's ideal for the calf to get its own mother's milk. I know in commercial farming that rarely happens, but that used to be the case, right? Same thing for baby goats, baby sheep, same idea, right? Mammals, female mammals make milk, they lactate when they have kids. And so that's the initial food that child, that baby, that child, that young creature will eat. If you're an adult, though, inflammation can come from consuming milk and milk products. So we just need to be aware of it. And I know that's the least popular thing for people to hear because many people love milk, they love cheese. But I say you can eat a food that you love as long as it loves you back, if it's promoting your health. So if it's boosting inflammation in your body, it could be the source of joint aches, pain, stiffness, depression, anxiety, other issues with mood, being irritable. Maybe your skin erupts and you have eczema or psoriasis or other kinds of skin diseases, and you're like, why is that happening? Maybe you have gas and bloating. Maybe you have an embarrassing amount of farting and you can't blame it on others or hide it all the time, right? You're afraid to go out. It's gotten so bad because your gut is combustible. It does not like that milk, and it's been trying to tell you this for years. Maybe you're constantly sniffling. You've got a runny nose. Maybe you have to constantly cough up phlegm and mucus from your throat. There's many signs and symptoms that the body says when it's struggling. It's like, I need some help. I need you to not be drinking that milk. So just be open to the thought, right? So that's why I wanted to put this in here as a myth and have a chance to talk about that reality. There's other great sources of nutrients than just milk. Plus, if you think about it, for the poor cows, the process they go through to get the milk, oh my God, it's not a good scene. Okay? All right, moving on. Next myth. Inflammation is caused by a lack of medications or supplements. Now, this is an interesting thought, right? Let's unpack it. So, chronic inflammation often stems from poor dietary choices, which can be addressed by providing the gut with its essential nutrients like glutamine. And I will talk about glutamine some more throughout the rest of this video. So, if you know or suspect that you have an issue with your gut health, it's good to figure out, hey, am I getting enough glutamine, right? And chronic inflammation is so interesting. The good news is we can do something about it. We are not the victims of this. We can have agency and make good choices. But first, you have to know what's going on. And when I say poor dietary choices, I mean in terms of the nutrition, the food you typically eat. Does that food agree with you? Does it let you have even level, normal, healthy levels of blood sugar? Is it fine for your blood pressure? How's it doing for your cholesterol profile? How about your moods? Are your moods even throughout the day? How about your energy levels? Are you able to live your life the way you'd like? Or do you find you run out of energy about 20 minutes after you wake up, or you don't even wake up with energy, right? So much can come from food. This is a persistent idea around let your food be your medicine, let your medicine be your food. All right, next myth. Gut issues like leaky gut are rare or unimportant. Well, friends, here's the reality. In today's world, gut permeability, also called leaky gut, is a common issue linked to numerous health conditions, including autoimmune diseases and allergies. Anytime someone is hypersensitive to something, whether it's an airborne allergy, a contact kind of an allergy, autoimmune problems, you always have to look at gut health. It is essential. And as described, the idea of a leaky gut or gut permeability makes a big difference here, right? Again, the integrity of that gut lining, those epithelial cells that line your small intestine, they are like this. They're literally called interdigitated. They look like that, right? And they should be a tight junction such that the proteins, the other things that your body is digesting, stay where they belong inside that intestinal tube. But when this junction is compromised, boom. So these large molecules, often larger proteins, go across too soon. The immune system sees them on the other side and goes on the attack because it thinks it might be a source of an infection. That raises your inflammation. And that's where all the ruckus comes from. That's the problem. Okay? All right, next. Here's another myth. Beef is inherently unhealthy and should be avoided for heart health. Now, this is controversial, but it's true. It's based in reality. If you think about human health over the thousands of years we've been on this planet, the reality is this. Grass-fed beef is rich in nutrients like glutamine, which support gut health and reduce inflammation, contradicting the generalization that all red meat is harmful. Now let's drill down here. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments on this one. Please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you can get more information like this. We need to be really thoughtful about what we think is harmful and not harmful. If you look at how cows are raised today as they become beef, grass-fed beef used to be the standard. If you said to your grandmom or to your great-grandfather, "Ooh, I'm going to go purchase some grass-fed beef," they'd look at you like, "Grass-fed beef? What are you talking about? What the hell else do cows eat besides grass?" Right? But in today's world, they get fed a lot of stuff that makes no sense for them. They get fed all kinds of grains. They get fed all sorts of scrap sources of things. Some of them, right before slaughter, get fed, believe it or not, concrete just so they will weigh heavier on the scale, and the cattle rancher who grew them will be paid more. I mean, it's really pretty crazy what can go on in terms of the production of beef at scale. So with that in mind, if you are able to get access to grass-fed beef, it is rich in all sorts of nutrients. It's very satisfying and satiating. People who eat it often tell me that they have a much easier time with portion control. They feel that they can tell they are full, and all the problems they were having before that they thought was a problem have gone away, right? So if you think about it, back in the day, beef was grass-fed. They were not feeding cows anything else. It was simply grass. And in today's world, because cows are fed and raised in a way such that it just defies anything that makes sense for their natural production, it also makes sense that if we eat it, since we're the most concentrated animal at the top of the food chain, we're going to get inflammation because the cows are inflamed. So if the cows get to live a normal life, eat the foods they were supposed to eat intended by nature, then you're going to be okay. If, on the other hand, the only beef quality you've got access to is conventionally raised beef that's full of all of these strange chemicals, the cows didn't get a chance to be out in the pasture at all. They did not eat grass. They probably were finished with grain, and all kinds of chemicals. Their bodies produce inflammation just like ours do. So then you're eating a red meat product that's full of inflammation already. Of course, you're going to have a problem if you eat that. So I think that's something to really take to heart and consider. Okay? All right, next myth. You need fiber to maintain gut health. Now, here's the reality. With inflammatory conditions, especially in the gut, some of them improve if fiber intake is temporarily reduced, as fiber can worsen or exacerbate symptoms for susceptible individuals. Specifically, if someone has a gut disease like Crohn's disease, or if they have irritable bowel syndrome, sometimes abbreviated as IBS, this can be a big deal. Fiber can actually be a problem for that person. So you might need to tease it apart and look for different kinds of fiber sources. Drop the amount of fiber you eat, maybe go gently or have to just stop altogether, depending on what your own personal needs are. For most people, most of the time, fiber is going to help with their gut health. It will specifically help to feed the microorganisms that are part of their microbiome that leads them to having healthy levels of cholesterol and a good cholesterol profile, of having healthy levels of blood sugar, etc. But for some people, they're going to have to hit the pause button. All right, it is possible for fiber to not be the friend of health. Okay, here's another myth. All vegetables are equally beneficial for gut health. Here's the reality. While many vegetables, of course, are wonderfully healthy, right? Just rich in nutrients, vitamins, electrolytes, minerals, some, like beans and legumes, can irritate the gut. Some people do have adverse reactions to the beans and legumes. For other people, it's just fine. You know who you are if you struggle with beans and legumes. Now, for most people, cabbage is going to be gentler, and it is also rich in glutamine. Just like that grass-fed beef we talked about was rich in glutamine, cabbage is also rich in glutamine, and that can be helpful for repairing an overburdened, struggling gut. So if you need a boost in your gut health, increasing the amount of cabbage you eat might be a simple way to get that done. All right, here's another myth. Fermented foods are universally tolerated. Okay. Here's the reality. Some individuals with severe gut inflammation might need to introduce fermented foods gradually, i.e., one at a time, to avoid digestive discomfort. And sometimes, if people have struggles with fermented foods, they might also be having histamine reactions. And so, if you are someone who has unexplained itchiness, if you know you've got gut problems, etc., and you tend to eat a lot of fermented foods, maybe it's yogurt, maybe it's kimchi, maybe it's sauerkraut, maybe it's pickles, etc., you might want to back down on that and have like one at a time, reintroduce them slowly to see what it is your body tolerates, okay? For a lot of us, fermented foods are awesome and they're a wonderful health builder, but there are times and places where this is a problem for people. Okay, now here's another myth. Anti-inflammatory diets require complex meal plans. All right, reality. Look, simple changes one step at a time, such as I'm suggesting here if you're struggling with inflammation, focusing on eating grass-fed beef and cabbage, that can have profound, really helpful effects for your overall health and helping to decrease the amount of inflammation you're experiencing without complicated meal planning. So if your life is busy, things are difficult, they're challenging, I suggest keep it simple and focus in on a few foods that will be more likely to be helpful to your gut than irritating to your gut. If you are vegetarian or plant-based and you're eating soy products, please make sure they're organic so that you're really getting the benefit from the soy protein and not problems, okay? All right, another myth. Supplements alone can fix inflammation. Now, while supplements like glutamine can help, because you can take just plain old glutamine, dietary changes will be more effective because you're getting other nutrients in combination with how glutamine appears in nature, right? To provide a sustainable and hopefully delicious solution. All right, here's another myth. Inflammation management is only for those with chronic diseases. Au contraire, friends. Au contraire. No, no, no. Here's the reality. Everyone can benefit from reducing inflammation. Today's world is very inflammatory. The chemicals come in from all directions. The things we eat, the things we drink, the air we breathe, the water we bathe in. It's just on and on. It's a multifactorial problem, and we have to think about this in a big picture way. So everyone can benefit from reducing inflammation as it plays a role in aging. It plays a role in the oxidative burden that our body has. It plays a role in altering how well our immune systems work and our overall health. Inflammation is something that we really need to be thoughtful about and actively manage. All right. And so to get information, you're always welcome to follow me on my social media pages. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. And you can also check out my websites. You can go back to the description for this channel. All the information is there. And if you're in my email system, I'm happy to send you out my newsletters and offers things that are there to provide accessible, evidence-based information to help you guide your own health decisions and just help you think about things a little more broadly. I know that in today's world, for many of us, we sometimes have a personal experience that is very different than what might be the conventional thought. And so it's just good to be informed about what are the options that could be relevant for you and the people you care about. All right, thanks so much. Have a beautiful day. Remember, self-care is not selfish. Please give this video a like, share it if you want with others who could benefit from it. Comment, love to have comments that helps the YouTube algorithm to know, hey, people like this content, and it helps me grow the channel. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.